Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Christ Driven Woman podcast. I am your host, Sharice Burton, and I'm so excited that you're here. Now, you might not be excited when you find out what we're going to talk about. Maybe the title gave you a little bit of a heads up, but real quick, I just want to make a suggestion. If you are not catching this on YouTube, go over, get on YouTube, and like and subscribe my channel there that is Sharice Burton Coach. I would love to see you there. And on YouTube, I can actually see the comments. So if you're watching me from YouTube, awesome. Say hello in the comments. All right. So let's get to it. Perfection kills. And boy, do I have a story that you might not even believe today. But here's the thing. I think we have sort of, as a generation, or maybe just society in general, has started really, I think, moving hopefully a little bit more away from the whole perfectionism sort of mindset. But I still believe it is there. In fact, I actually believe it is one of the enemy's greatest tools because, in where is it? I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. There it is, John 10:10, where the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And I believe that when the enemy can get into your head and whisper things to you like you're not good enough or whatever you're doing isn't good enough, and you have to reach this mental level of excellence that nobody can attain, that perfectionism, then because it is so hard to attain, because it's impossible for in most cases, you end up beating yourself up and the enemy just rips that joy out of you in whatever area you're working in or whatever area you're trying to be perfect in. So I actually have struggled with perfectionism for most of my entire life and really into my early adult years. So I'm going to tell you that story, and then I'm going to give you some things that I know perfectionism causes and some ways that we can sort of avoid or walk away from or get a little bit of healing in around perfectionism. Okay. So many of you know my story. I grew up in a very abusive home. I was placed in a children's home. I changed schools 14 times. I was put back in the abusive home, and then I ran away from home when I was 17. So there's a lot of baggage that came up with that. And my dream for the future was to be a mom. That's all I ever wanted to be. I wanted to be a mom and have babies. That's what I was so excited about. That was my dream. And I just would watch the shows back in the day, like the Brady Bunch or Leave It to Beaver. I know I'm totally dating myself. Happy Days, all of those shows. And in those shows, the families were perfect. Little House on the Prairie, although I did not want to go back to that and make my own butter, none of that. But I wanted to have a perfect family. I wanted to have a perfect nucleus there, if you will, of the mom and the dad and the children. And that would mean, in my mind, that my kids would be happy, right? Because it would be completely opposite of what I grew up with. That was my goal, to be complete. My family, whenever I got older, would be completely opposite of what I grew up with. And in my mind, that was perfection. That was the opposite. And the opposite was perfection. So I would always think about the shows like the Brady Bunch and Carol Brady and Leave It to Beaver and June Cleaver. June Cleaver always wore a dress and pearls, and she never even worked. She just was home all the time and she had a dress and pearls on. But anyway, I really thought, in order for my family to be happy, in order for my kids to be happy, it has to be perfect. It has to be perfect. And if it wasn't perfect, then it was like my childhood growing up. I mean, there was no middle ground. It was one or the other. So that's what I set out on. I set out on creating a perfect family atmosphere, everything within my power. So I would clean the house every single day. I cleaned the bathrooms every single day. I did the laundry every single day. I vacuumed every single day. Now, let me just be very clear about something. My amazing husband, Andy, never in a million years has put pressure on me, has asked me, required me, none of that to do anything really. I mean, he's never been that kind of a spouse, ever. The man will eat cream of mushroom soup out of a can. I'm telling you, he is not hard to please. So he's never been one to put pressure on me. It was all me putting pressure on myself. So I did all of those things so that the house would be perfect. I swept and mopped every single day. I cooked dinner about 3 to 4 nights a week, sometimes 5. We did have leftovers, but even with the leftovers, I had to make them perfect. But I cooked. I wouldn't use the microwave when I cooked dinner because you cook on the stove top and in the oven. You don't cook with the microwave. That's what I believed. And I would set the table, and so everything had to be perfect. I was trying to compete with the perfection that I saw on the screen. How many of us do that right now, though? How many of us compete in that comparison mindset with what we're seeing on screens that are when we're scrolling? And in reality, that's not their life. That's just a highlight reel of their life. But I was trying to compete with that perfectionism that I saw on the screen. And I would judge myself on how good of a job I was doing if when Andy came home from work about 5:30 or 6, the dinner I had cooked was already on the table. The table was set, the kitchen was clean, all the dishes I used to cook with were already cleaned and put away. The boys, now granted, I just had two boys and then a third one was born towards the later of this because I did this for 10 years, y'all. I did this for 10 years. And I would make sure that, their hair was combed, they had clean clothes on, made sure their faces were clean, their hands were clean. And if when Andy walked through that door, all of that was going on, all of that was happening, and there was steam coming off the food on the table. If all of that was going on, then I was doing a good job. That's how I judged myself. And I would get up every single morning before Andy got up and would shower, do my hair and my makeup. I mean, again, he would never ask me to do any of these things. That was in my head. So I would do all of the cleaning and the cooking and would make sure that I had full makeup on. Even when I was sick, I would still get up, take a shower, make the bed, and then get on the bed and lay down. I mean, I was nuts, literally. So I did that for 10 years, 10 years, because I couldn't see anything about myself that was good enough. So I had to really push myself and put that pressure on myself to be perfect. And when we do that to ourselves, we not only are trying to reach expectations that are absolutely ridiculous, we are also trying to be in control of every single second of our life. We have to be in control when we are in that perfectionist seat. Okay. So if you can identify with this, just know you're not alone. I get it. And if I'm stepping on your toes, just know that you don't have to stay there. You don't have to stay there. Okay. Because we can remind ourselves that everyone, John 10, no, Romans 3:23. It's Romans 3:23 that everybody falls short. Everybody falls short of the glory of God. Everyone. But in 2 Corinthians, his grace is sufficient for us. So we don't have to be perfect. Jesus made up the difference for us because God knows we are not perfect. And of course, he loves us just the way we are. But I could not see that for myself because I did not love myself. I did not love myself. I did not love what I saw. So I tried to be in control of everything and make it as picture perfect as I could possibly make it. And I'm telling you, like I said, I did that for 10 years. And yeah, it was exhausting. And yes, I was high pressure and I was highly stressed all the time. And finally, 10 years, I hit a wall. And that's when I went into a very I had already struggled with depression on and off, but that's when I went into a very deep my first situation, a very deep battle with depression. But I mean, I was making myself that way because I was putting so much pressure. I mean, I don't know what I thought because Andy is amazing, but I was still scared to death he was gonna leave me. I was still scared to death that this family that I had wasn't gonna last. And so I was trying to do all the things to make it as good as I possibly could. And here are a couple things I want you to see. When we are in that place of trying to make everything perfect and we're trying to be in control of it and we're fighting that perfectionistic or perfectionist point of view, number one, we are setting up false expectations, not just for ourselves, but for those around us. In fact, I remember one time, and this actually taught me a lesson. My husband, again, amazing. It was after dinner, and because I had to do the dishes immediately. The kitchen had to be cleaned every single night within like 30 minutes after dinner. I mean, I was up and doing dishes. And it was right after dinner, and he was on the floor playing with the boys because, of course, he'd worked all day. And I was irritated because he wasn't helping me do the dishes. And I said something to him, and it wasn't ugly or anything. I just said, "Hey, are you going to help me?" And he said, "I have been gone all day, and I want to play with the boys. As soon as I put them to bed, or we put them to bed, I will help with the dishes." And he was very kind. He wasn't rude at all, but it really made me understand. It sort of gave me a picture. Of course, I didn't listen to it and I kept going with my perfectionistic mindset, but it gave me a point to think, oh, I'm expecting him and them to be perfect as well and follow my lead in this perfectionistic world. So, number one, it sets up false expectations for yourself, everyone around you, and it also kind of puts in some false expectations that you have about God and what he is there for and how he loves us. I mean, we just it's very much a misrepresentation when we have that perfectionistic mindset, okay? Number 2, it leads you to be inauthentic. When you are in that perfectionistic mindset, you don't want anybody to see when it's not perfect. So you are always wearing a mask, so to speak. You are always putting up a front. You are never just genuine, relaxed, authentic, real, because then that'll tell other people you're not perfect. And that can't happen. So you're constantly living inauthentically. And that's hard. That's hard. And number 3, it isolates you because you are living inauthentically, because you constantly have that wall up, because you can't let anybody see behind the scenes. You isolate yourself. You're not making real connections with anyone. So you're isolating yourself, keeping yourself alone because you don't want anybody to see the reality. Of course, I would tell myself that the perfection part was the reality, which in reality, that wasn't true. But when you are pushing yourself to be so perfect and expecting, you're putting up false expectations for other people and you are leading yourself to be inauthentic and you're not making connection with others, you're isolating. And man, that is where the enemy just can actually wreak even more havoc, is when you have isolated yourself. Okay. So let me share with you 3 areas or 3 steps you can take right now. If you're that person who's struggling with that perfectionistic point of view, if you feel like if you're not perfect, then you're not worthy, That is so wrong. If you feel like if you're not perfect, then you're not going to be loved. That is so wrong, sister. I want you to get in the word. But number one, I want you to forgive yourself, because 9 times out of 10, when we are fighting that perfectionistic point of view, we have held up some standard that we did not meet, and we are holding it against ourselves. We are not forgiving ourselves. We are blaming ourselves for every single thing that has gone wrong or is going wrong. And that is just not the truth. That is just not the truth. So I want you to practice forgiving yourself. And I want you to ask the Lord, what is it that I need to forgive myself for? Ask Him. You know how I always say, ask Him, get quiet, and then write it down. He will tell you. He will tell you. Okay. Number two, this is going to really step on some toes because it steps on my own toe. I step on my own toes with this one. Number two is we got to show more grace for other people. We got to love them through the eyes of Jesus. We've got to love them the way Jesus loves them. But if we're not loving ourselves the way Jesus loves us, it is really hard to love other people. In fact, I think it's impossible to love other people the way Jesus does with that grace if we're not loving ourselves and giving ourselves that grace. So I want you to practice giving grace to other people. And I want you to ask the Lord, where can you do that? Where is He calling you to show grace to other people? And number three, the third thing that you can do when you are in this place of fighting perfectionism, what we're doing is we're following our own mindset. We're following our own imagination of what we think we should be doing, of what we think will make us worthy. Okay. Number three is instead of following our own imagination, our own thoughts about what we think needs to be done and what will make us worthy, I want you to follow God's leading. And that's going to mean sitting down, spending some time and asking Him, what do you want out of this situation? What do you want me to learn? What do you want me to do? How do you want me to act? What are the activities or the actions you want me to take in this situation or in these circumstances? Follow God's leading and create a habit. Create a habit of doing that. If you will create a habit of following God's leading and asking Him, number one, He'll answer you. But number two, He will be the example of grace to others and love so that you can start loving yourself the way He loves you. And perfection is not required, my friend. Jesus makes us perfect because of who He is and what He did. So I want you to take some time and ask yourself, where do you fight this? Is perfectionism something that you struggle with? And I want you to go through these last steps. Forgive yourself. I want you to show more grace to other people. And I want you to follow God's leading. And that means asking Him where He's going and what He wants you to do. All right. Thank you so much for being here. I hope this spoke to you. And like I said, if you're not watching this on YouTube, great. If you're listening on a podcast platform, wonderful. But hop on over to YouTube, find me, Sharice Burton Coach, and like and subscribe and leave me some comments and let me know what hit you the most about this particular episode, because perfection will kill anything. And we want to bring Christ into everything. All right, my friends.